Chapter 51. The Fall of the True King. Ina's army trudged through the dust-choked streets of Nan Shao, the once cracked earth now softened by the first rain in 9 years. The 5 spirit pearls, clutched in her hands, pulsed with a light that mirrored the storm clouds above. She raised them high, and the sky answered with a gentle downpour, the droplets cool against her skin. The people, their faces streaked with dirt and hope, knelt as the water washed over their parched fields. "Princess Ina!" The cries rose, a chorus of relief that shook the very stones of the palace. She did not smile, though the weight of their adoration pressed upon her like a second skin. Her mother had taught her that rulers must be both gentle and firm, but the words felt hollow now, as if her mother's voice had been carried away by the wind. Cult Leader Wei stepped forward, his robes the deep black of a moonless night, his face obscured by a mask of polished jade. "The princess has returned," he announced, his voice smooth as silk. "But she is no longer the true ruler. She is Inez, the traitor who conspired with the Black Miao to betray Nan Shao." His words hung in the air, sharp as a blade. The people murmured, their cheers faltering. Ina's hand tightened around the pearls, her knuckles white. She had heard whispers of the impostor, but she had never seen him until now. Josue Chi, his sword drawn, stepped between Ina and the crowd. "You lie," he said, his voice low but firm. "The true king is Steven Wen, who perished 10 years ago when you murdered him." Wei's mask shifted, a faint smile curling the edges of his lips. "You speak foolishly, boy. The king is dead, and I am his rightful heir." Ina turned to Josue, her eyes pleading. "He's lying. The real king." Before she could finish, Wei drew a dagger from his sleeve, its blade glinting under the rain. He struck not at Ina, but at the Black Miao soldiers standing behind her. The first soldier fell, blood blooming on the stone steps. The others raised their weapons, but Wei's men were already moving, their blades flashing in the downpour. "Stop!" Ina shouted, but her voice was drowned by the clash of steel. Josue Chi fought with the precision of a man who had spent his life on the battlefield, his sword a blur of motion. He cut down 2 of Wei's men, but 3 more closed in, their blades aimed at his back. Wei stepped closer to Ina, his voice a whisper meant only for her. "You should have stayed in the mountains, Inez. Now you'll die with the rest of your kind." Ina's hand flew to her throat, but before she could draw her own weapon, Wei plunged the dagger into her side. The pain was sharp, sudden, and then a slow, searing heat spread through her chest. She gasped, her vision blurring. She felt the warm wetness of her blood as it trickled down her robes, staining the jade steps beneath her. "Ina! No!" Josue shouted, his voice raw with panic. He pushed through the chaos, his sword flashing as he cut down the last of Wei's men. He caught her as she fell, her body limp against his chest. The people, their cheers now replaced with cries of horror, began to gather around them. A woman in a faded green robe pushed through the crowd, her hands already working to staunch the bleeding. "She's poisoned," she murmured, her voice tight with urgency. The blade was coated in the venom of the black snake. Josue knelt, cradling Ina's head in his lap. "We must revive her," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. He raised his hands, his fingers weaving a pattern in the air. "By the spirits of the earth and sky, I call upon the power of the ancestors to return her to us." The air around them shimmered, a faint golden light emanating from Josue's palms. The people watched, their faces etched with hope, as Ina's breathing slowed, then stopped entirely. Josue's hands trembled as he continued the spell, his voice rising in a chant that echoed through the rain-soaked streets. "Ina, wake up," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, wake up." The palace alarm began to ring, a deep, resonant sound that shook the stones of the palace walls. The people fell silent, their eyes darting toward the source of the noise. Josue paused, his hands still glowing with the faint light of the spell. "No," he whispered, his voice thick with despair. "Not now." Ina's eyes fluttered open just for a moment, and she saw the rain falling on her mother's face, the woman who had taught her to rule with kindness. "Mother," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I tried." Her hand reached out, her fingers brushing the rain-soaked stone. The light in Josue's hands dimmed, and Ina's body went still. The people wept, their cries mingling with the sound of the rain. They did not know the truth, that the king they had been cheering for was no longer among them. They only knew that the drought had ended, and that the rain had washed away the dust of their despair. Wei stepped forward, his mask now removed, revealing a face of cold calculation. "The time for mercy is over," he said, his voice carrying over the cries of the crowd. "I will not let anyone know the truth." He raised his hand, signaling to his men. The soldiers moved, their blades drawn, their eyes fixed on the people who had just been cheering for the very woman they were now to kill. Josue Chi stood, his sword drawn, his body shielding Ina's still form. "You will not harm them," he said, his voice steady despite the grief that threatened to consume him. "Now I am still standing." Wei laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "You are a fool, boy. You think you can stop me." The crowd surged forward, their hands raised in defense, their voices a single roar of defiance. "We will not let you hurt her." Wei's men hesitated, their blades lowering slightly. The people of Nan Shao, their faces streaked with rain and tears, stood firm, their resolve unshaken. "You have made a mistake," Josue said, his voice firm. "The people of Nan Shao have always stood for justice, even when the king was not among them." Wei turned to leave, his men following. As he passed the palace gates, he paused, looking back at the crowd. "You may think you have won," he said, his voice cold. "But the truth will come out." The rain continued to fall, washing away the blood on the jade steps. The people of Nan Shao standing together, their hearts heavy but unbroken. They did not know that the true king had perished, that the man they had been cheering for was no longer among them. They only knew that the drought had ended, and that the rain had washed away the dust of their despair. They would remember Ina, the princess who had brought them rain, and who had given her life for their sake. Josue Chi knelt once more, his hand resting on Ina's chest. "Rest now, princess," he whispered. "Your mother would be proud." The rain fell, the people of Nan Shao standing together, their hearts heavy but unbroken. They would not forget the truth, even if it was hidden from them. They would not forget the rain, or the princess who had given her life for their sake. The palace gates creaked shut behind Wei, the sound echoing through the rain-soaked streets. The people of Nan Shao stood, their hands clasped together, their voices rising in a single steady chant. "Ina! Ina! Ina! Ina!" The rain fell, the people of Nan Shao standing together, their hearts heavy but unbroken. They would not forget the truth, even if it was hidden from them. They would not forget the rain, or the princess who had given her life for their sake.